Hello, my name is Coach Pav, and today I'm going to be answering probably the most common question I get asked as a coach, and that is how you can improve your cycling power. So I'm obviously going to be referencing power a lot today, but if you're only using heart rate or rate of perceived exertion, that's absolutely fine as well. The principles what I'm going to be teaching you are going to work no matter how you monitor, record, whatever you're training. So don't worry if I'm always referencing power and you're only using heart rate, that's absolutely fine. Same as if you're doing just, power indoors and out. So to be honest, this really does go back to my whole holistic, complete cyclist thing that I talk about a lot. I will link this in the blog if you're on my website, or it will be in the description of the video if you're watching on YouTube. But I talk about being a complete cyclist for a reason. That's where you unlock all the gains. And I'll go through some of the really, really important ones today. But we're going to start with probably the biggest, and it's a really obvious one, and that is your training. You might be listening to this and thinking, well, I ride my bike a lot, I do a lot of riding, I go out and I do 15 hours a week just riding around. It's great, but the biggest thing that you can do shifting between riding a bike or exercising and training is really introducing structure. For me, structure is the number one thing that will get you the biggest gains from that holistic look. So structure can mean many things to many different athletes and people. It can mean on a very sort of micro scale, like each session structured? Are you hitting at a certain intensity? Is the intensity that you're riding out or training at in that session going to give you the adaptation that you want that's going to help you improve? That's one way of it. You can then look at it as more of a bigger look. Is your week going to progress you? Your mesocycle, which is 3-4 weeks potentially with adequate recovery and stuff like that. Does everything look like that and build in structure like that? I also think that we probably need to look at a bigger picture. We can talk about maybe an 8-year plan, 4-year plan, 2-year plan, but certainly a year plan. If you've not seen my video on how to create your annual training plan, look at that as well. That's an amazing video that people have told me that has really helped them, because when you start to look at the bigger picture and you have a real focus on what you need to do as a whole, you really do start to understand exactly what you need to be doing to reach your goals. And we're going to talk a lot about power. Of course, we want to increase our power, but unless power is something that is, the number one factor in your training, then also consider about looking at your goals. It's really important that you don't get focused on power as the only thing you're doing. It's great. I talk to a lot of people who are like, yeah, I have a 350 watt FTP. That's fantastic, but they can't ride a Gran Fondo because they pretty much stay in one sort of area and they've just been boosting that. It's great if you want to do like anything less than an hour or around about there. But honestly, you're not a complete cyclist. FTP isn't the only measure of that, and I think that we need to start looking at as a complete look at cyclists. So you might be wondering what that structure is. There's no right or wrong answer. If you've never used any form of structure, the first thing would be to maybe reach out to a coach and have a personalized training plan. You can do something on Zwift. We used to download them off of websites for free, training plans and stuff like that. I would stay away from anything generic. While you're probably going to see some gains from that, you are going to be limited, and you will see much better by having a coach personalize your training plan to you. We can talk about what that actually means, but fundamentally at a minimum scale, the training needs to be synergistic with your life. So if you're looking at a training plan that you've downloaded for free or bought cheaply, and you're like, well, I can't ride 3 hours on this day because I have work, instantly you're already on the back foot. You're not going to get the best gains from that training plan. Spend a little bit more money. You don't necessarily need to work with a coach one-to-one, but spend some money, get a personalized training plan, because that's where you're going to start to unlock a lot of gains. And again, that's start looking at that bigger picture about what you actually want to achieve and stuff like that. So once you start really factoring in all of these things in terms of the structure, you're gonna start to really boost that. So again, probably the last thing to talk about in your structure is when you start to look at a bigger picture outside of what individual each session needs to do in order to produce that adaptation in the body which you're looking for, is where those adaptations actually happen. And it's not actually in the training sessions that you're doing, it's in your recovery. So when I look at, and talk to a lot of athletes, the big thing that most people do is they tend to overtrain, and that's hitting too many sessions that are high intensity back to back or within 1 week, or it's simply just not taking enough time to allow that recovery. As amateur athletes, we do tend to think that we should be spending all of our limited training time on our bikes, and that's not necessarily true, because you potentially are already fatigued from work. Even if you sit at a desk all day, you're still going to have some form of mental fatigue, family life, and that's not to say you leave them, but all of these things, they all add up. So even if you only have 5 to 8 hours of training time a week, you need to be honest with what actually you can achieve in that, because if you do those 5 to 8 hours and you hit them either hard or maybe not even that hard, maybe you're doing some mainly threshold based sweet spot type training, even if you are doing that and you're not recovering properly, that training is not going to do you any good. So when you start to talk about, or when we start to talk about structure, yes, we need to understand exactly what intensity you need to be hitting in each training session to get an adaptation, whatever that adaptation is. Talk about power here, so honestly, there's a massive spectrum there. I would suggest that you do need to train at pretty much every intensity at some point in your year, depending on what time you have available. But once you've got that done, you need to be looking at that recovery, because you're just not going to see any long-term gains without that recovery at all. And that really, I can't stress how highly enough, even if you do a sedentary, sitting on your butt all day job, it's really important that you factor in that mental fatigue, because I've seen so many athletes who are already mentally fried by the time they get to their events or even their testing, right? They're doing their testing and they're like, I can't even focus on this because, training's become such a chore, so hard to fit into their lives. So big win for me as a coach is just looking at that big picture, that structure. It's not just the individual session, it's not just your week. It's like every block, every year, we're looking at that massive, bigger picture, and that structure is going to really unlock some huge power gains. So another big win for me as a coach is when I talk to athletes, and it's so common with amateur athletes, and I ask them what strength work they do. Often it's there's not a lot, and I understand that, because if you've only got 5 to 8, maybe less hours a week training time, you might not be considering doing any strength work. Honestly, I think that we should all be doing a little bit. I know there's a lot of coaches and athletes out there that do none, and they're phenomenal athletes, and that's absolutely fine. But I think depending on what you actually want to do, there's a big reason for you doing some strength stuff. And I'm not suggesting that you need to go out and get yourself a gym membership or even a home gym. Lots of stuff you can do at home is going to really benefit you. And you could start by just doing some basic, core training stuff. All of my athletes that come and work with me, whether you're buying a training plan personalized or one-to-one coaching, I include a lot of this strength and conditioning stuff, whether that's injury prevention, core training, stuff for advanced users who have a full gym setup or access to a gym, or stuff for people that are just going to be able to do 30 minutes at home every now and again. You're going to see some incredible gains, mainly not just because you're going to be able to build your leg muscles, but when you actually activate, strengthen your core, you're going to be able to apply that power more effectively, and you're going to be more comfortable. And you might be wondering how comfort actually relates to power. Well, if you've ever sat and you've tried to do a 25-mile time trial, we're talking about FTP. Your FTP would be a 60-minute effort, and if you've ever done a 25-mile time trial on a bike that doesn't fit you, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. And as we look and see that, relate this to your goals. If your goal is to do a Gran Fondo Sportive, I'm sure you've all ridden a bike that didn't quite fit and it was horrible. You've not had a proper bike fit. By the time you get towards the end of that ride, you're just not comfortable and you're in a lot of pain. You're not applying that power well. So think about yourself. Yes, we're talking about increasing your power, but there's lots of different durations of which you should be focusing on. Yes, it's great to have a 1,000-watt sprint. Yes, it's great to have a 300-watt FTP. But if you're training for a Sportive or a Gran Fondo, those things are, secondary goals. They're nice to have. It's great that we can, get our thumbs up from our friends, talk about it at the cafe stop. But ultimately, the best bang for your buck is to work on actually that bigger picture, which is how much you can hold, or the average power you can hold for a Gran Fondo or Sportive. Of course, none of this really works if you don't eat right. And I say this a lot. I always use this as extreme in that you could do all the training, you could do all the mental prep, you can do all the tactics and stuff like that. But if you forget to eat, or you don't eat, and stuff like that, or you eat McDonald's all the time. Sorry to beat up McDonald's. I always bringing them in, but it's the same principle applies. Whatever junky food. If you're not eating the right foods at the right times, then you're not going to see those big gains. And I think when we're really talking about power improvements, this is where you're going to see the most. I absolutely don't think you need to be, eating like a Buddhist monk. We're only human. I don't eat perfectly, and I don't expect my clients to. I think there's definitely a balance, and the bigger your goals are, and probably the closer you get to your goals, the more perfect you have to be. But never chasing perfection. It's just a stupid a pipe dream that we just can't achieve. So have grace for yourself. Yes, enjoy a beer or a glass of wine, take out, do it in moderation. Don't beat yourself up when you do it. Don't consider it being cheating. Just use it as motivation to be as good for another week or whatever it is you're going to do. Personally, eat the rest of the time, eat as many plants as possible. For me, lean proteins, and just timing that well, not worrying too much about eating protein eat straight after your training, more about carbohydrate replenishment and electrolytes. And when you're doing that, you're just going to give your body enough of the right stuff at the right time to do that. Of course, it's a lot bigger than that. It's really hard to summarize this in a short video. So if you do have any questions about how you would personalize the nutrition or even training, or we're going to go on to mentality next, and those strategies, definitely reach out to me or another coach just to make sure you're getting it right. So I just touched on it then. The last thing for me when you want to improve your cycling power is the way you approach it mentally. Now, I'm not just talking about the way that you would go into a test, although I will say that the athletes who I have introduced meditation to, and the athletes that actually commit to that meditation routine, gratitude, mindfulness, whatever you want to call it, they are the ones that see a bigger improvement in testing and events, mainly because, for example, we'll take a 20-minute test. That's never going to stop sucking, especially those last 5 minutes or so. But you become more accepting of that pain, and it's temporary, and it's going to go away. And that's what myself and the athletes that do that meditation actually say, is that it's actually easier in some respects to complete and to hurt and to bury yourself. And if you're doing something like that test, or you're doing a Gran Fondo, the end of it, or an ultra event, I think it's really important that you have that in your armor, and you're not just going to start breaking down and crying as soon as it hurts, or stopping pedaling. So yes, I think that it boils down to whatever you want to do. You've got to be able to embrace the suck, is what I hear a lot of people talking about, and pushing through. So meditation for me is number one. There's lots of great apps out there. I use Calm, I've used Headspace before. I think Balance app is still offering its first year free, and I did see one advertised when I was looking online earlier. I can't remember its name, but there's loads popping up. It's like we're in an app culture, right? Everybody's got an app right now. So 100% definitely look at your mentality. You don't want to be focused, as I said earlier, too much on improving your power. If we focus on something too much and too greatly, put too much stress and too much importance behind it, guess what? You tend to mess it up. That's the truth, is that we tend as humans to have these barriers. It's the same with weight loss. If the more you focus on wanting to lose weight, the more stress you introduce to your life because it's not happening, the less it happens. And the same goes for improving this. So if you're somebody that always gets to testing, and you see a ramp test or your 20-minute test, whatever it is, and you get anxiety, it's okay to have some anxiety, but definitely start to look at your meditation routine, your mindfulness, gratitude, whatever it is. Implement that into your life. It takes a while. It's not something you're going to get. So I know it goes against our instant gratification, mentality that we love as human beings, but commit to it. Just 10 minutes a day. try and do it every day and do it for as long as possible. I've been doing it for 5 or 6 years now, and I can tell you that I'm still noticing now improvements in my mentality, general day-to-day, and my athleticism. So it's not something that's going to get like a instant gain, but it is something that is going to improve not just your performance in cycling, but your general life. So definitely include that. All right. And that's it. Thank you for watching my video on how to improve your cycling power. As ever, if you've enjoyed this, please make sure you share it with your friends. Give me a thumbs up. Leave me a comment. Think I've missed anything? Definitely comment on YouTube. If you are on YouTube, in the description, I'm going to link in any other resources that I've talked about during this. If you're on my website, it'll be in the blog that this video is attached to. As ever, if you want to talk with me about how I can help you improve your cycling power, 15-minute consultations are always free. So head to my website, fill out the form, and I'll be in touch. Thanks again for tuning in. My name is Coach Pav, and have an awesome day.